Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace be upon you. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the Deputy Director of CAIR National. Hope all of you are doing well and staying safe, and I hope the same for your families. Ramadan Mubarak. May Allah grant all of you a safe and successful month of worship. Ameen. Welcome to the Daily Dose COVID Conversations with CAIR. Thank you so much for joining us. As you know, we've been hosting this program ever since the COVID-19 outbreak spread across our country to make sure we're bringing you the information you need to know about coronavirus, how it's impacting the Muslim community, and more importantly, I think how the Muslim community is responding in positive ways to this outbreak. Everything from how charities and masajid and civil rights groups and academics and medical workers and others, the positive and beneficial perspectives they're bringing. So we've been happy to highlight that for you, and we're happy to do that today. Inshallah, the topic of today's program is how to stay connected during COVID-19. You know, we're now over a month into this pandemic, and I think different organizations have had a lot of practice at figuring out how we can keep working digitally, how we can keep worshiping digitally, and how we can otherwise stay connected. And so we want to hear from two people within CAIR who've played a very major role in keeping our organization interconnected during this pandemic, and hear how they've done that. What tips do they have for other organizations and other people, especially during the month of Ramadan? And what we want to focus on today very specifically is how civil rights and advocacy groups can stay connected during this pandemic, because so much of our work depends on mobilizing people, engaging people, lobbying people, convincing people to take a stand, to take a position, to take action. And that's obviously a little bit harder when everyone is at home. You can't protest, you can't meet your local representative. And so, you know, I think our two guests can really share some great ideas about how advocacy and civil rights organizations have stayed connected so far, and how they can stay connected given that this pandemic may be lasting for some time. So with that all being said, let me welcome on our two special guests today, and thank you both for joining us. First is Sawsan Selim, who is the Communications Director with CAIR-Georgia, my former CAIR chapter, CAIR organization. Sawsan, can we bring on Sawsan? Sawsan is here. Assalamu alaikum, Sawsan.
Alaikum salam, Edward. How are you?
I'm wonderful, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Good to see
Everything's
you.
good.
Your
You as
background
well.
is awesome. I don't know what that is, but it's cool.
It's calming, which I really like during this time.
It's like you're in like a, I don't know, a fish tank or something, but it's, I like it. It's very cool. I need to get that, inshallah. And
Inshallah.
next I want to welcome on Sumaiya Zama, who is the Director of Community Advocacy and Outreach for CAIR Massachusetts.
Assalamu alaikum, Edward. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah. Doing well.
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. Your background also looks great, very neat, completely unlike my room. So alhamdulillah, that's wonderful. You are staying organized, which is another reason why you're on the show, to help us all stay organized as we address this topic of how we stay interconnected during this pandemic. So first, let me ask you both this. Before we even get into the topic, you know, how are things going in Georgia and Massachusetts in terms of the Muslim community, the virus, Ramadan? Just kind of give us a general lay of the land. What's it like for you guys right now in your neck of the woods? Sawsan, you want to start us off? Just how are things going there?
You know, alhamdulillah, I'm very glad that CAIR-Georgia started contingency planning at an early time. And that is really showing the fact that we're now able to produce the results that we want during this time. So it's been really great to be able to have the foundation to support the community, continue with our casework, which is still ongoing. It does not stop, as you know. And because we are a community organization and we are based and we work with the community, it's really been, we really had to step up our game. So it's been great to have pre-planning so that right now we are just doing the work instead of having to scurry around and figure things out.
Alhamdulillah. Awesome. And Sumaiya, how are things going in Massachusetts? You know, how's the chapter doing? How's the community doing? You know, what's the lay of the land there?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. You know, I think just like Sawsan was mentioning about CAIR-Georgia, like in very similar ways, CAIR-Massachusetts sort of jumped on early on to move a lot of our work into the digital space. You know, we quickly recognized using our existing infrastructures, using our existing social media accounts and the existing webinars and programming that we had. We just knew we had to ramp that up. And so we were on board with that. And of course, like our casework is also ongoing. And so we've sort of been in this space of recognizing that, you know, in-person interactions just aren't going to happen for all of our safety. And so we have to get creative as we think about outreach and working in the community.
Absolutely. So, you've kind of answered my first question, but I'll follow up on it a bit. Let me start with you, Sawsan. So when the pandemic breaks out, we've got to shut down the CAIR office in Atlanta. We've got to shut down in Massachusetts, DC. So what challenges did that present for a civil rights organization in particular? I mean, everyone has challenges, right? If no matter what your job is, it creates challenges. But what are some of the unique challenges that CAIR, and I think as a civil rights organization, advocacy organization, what are the unique challenges you had to face up front?
Well, I mean, our work involves face-to-face interaction, like major face-to-face interaction, especially in regards to working with clients, making sure we're available to them physically, discussing certain issues with our legislators that also requires us going to the Capitol and lobbying in person, and just in general, person-to-person activities, and one of which was coming up was the Muslim Advocacy Day, which we really enjoy every year, but that was something that was not an option for us anymore. So it was quickly a game of how do we still stay engaged with the community in a virtual space.
Gotcha. Sumaiya, how about you? What were the major challenges that you faced? I mean, I assume similar. Anything else that was unique in Massachusetts?
I think one thing that's unique, and I don't think it's unique to Massachusetts, but a lot of these organizations are rushing to the digital space, right? Like, I think everyone at this point in time is vying for folks' attention, wanting to, and it's not just organizations, it's universities, it's every part of your life, from work to, social interactions. And so I think one thing that we've been trying to deal with very intentionally is like Zoom fatigue, webinar fatigue, and trying to think of creative ways to keep people engaged in the digital space without tiring them out. And so that's something that we've been really intentional about wanting to improve upon.
Okay, that's a good point, because I mean, when I go through my Facebook right now, it's sponsorships for fundraising, or it's webinars and Zoom meetings, and then COVID-19 news and all that. So it can be overwhelming. I think I only watch webinars on Friday, in place of Juma. So Sawsan, is that a concern for you? Fatigue, and right now you've got the COVID-19, the Co-Victory initiative in Georgia. Maybe tell us a bit about that, and how do you avoid overwhelming people with too much content?
Yeah, so we do have that similar issue. So we try to have really unique and creative ideas that come out in the virtual space through CAIR-Georgia. And so 3 things that we really focus on in our communications are sensitivity, delivery, and personability. So sensitivity is basically what are appropriate asks during this time. We can't continuously ask people for donations when we also have to keep in mind that they're also struggling as well. So what are the appropriate times to ask people for certain things? And then delivery is really in terms of virtual platforms. So because times have been changing, particularly with Ramadan, the analytics are not getting the data that we need to ensure that we are producing content at a time that people will engage with it. So that's kind of an issue that we continuously have to run trial and error for. And also which social media platforms to use. So depending on the demographics that you want to engage, you have to decide which social media platforms are the most appropriate. And then lastly, personability. So I believe Sumaiya talked about this previously in another Zoom meeting. And I think with CAIR, we function at a level of professionalism, and that's required of us. But now with the pandemic, we kind of have to mix that in with emotional intelligence. So we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and make sure that we are personable with our supporters. And so one of the things that I've noticed in the marketing field is that personability will become the thing that makes a brand successful in the future. So we think about Governor Cuomo. What makes him so successful? It's not that he's talking at people, but to and with the people. So being vulnerable and including emotional intelligence and changing the idea of professionalism to include that personability is really important for us.
Okay. That makes sense. Sumaiya, how about on your end? Same question to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many creative ways to do it. I think one of the big things that I keep telling folks is, hour-long webinars are really tiring. There are like 6 or 7 webinars that, I get invited to that are not work related every single day. And there's just not enough, mental stamina that a human being has to be able to sit through all of that. And so really breaking down information, breaking down jargon, trying to go on Facebook Live or Instagram Live, or diversifying your social media platforms is going to be the most helpful thing for you. And also, exactly like Sawsan said, understanding who your audience is. My particular work within the chapter is with young people. That's sort of where my expertise lies as a youth worker. And so the first question I asked when this epidemic hit was, where are my young people? What social media platforms are they living on? Right? Everybody, depending on who you are, you have an affinity towards a particular social media platform. And so we found a lot of Muslim youth are on Instagram, a lot of Muslim youth are on TikTok, with very valid security concerns around TikTok, of course. But the reality of it is that they are consuming and generating content on particular social media platforms. How can we as a chapter start to create that type of content that will hold their attention and also deliver the work that we're trying to do?
Okay, so I mean, those are some specific examples. So what you're finding is that youth, the best way to connect with them is not necessarily Facebook or Twitter, but Instagram and TikTok. Is that right? And then Sawsan, how about for you? What are you seeing? What are the best, and not just for youth, but in general, what are the pros and cons of the various social media outlets? How are they managing this switch to digital? I know you mentioned that there were issues with analytics, not necessarily directing your content or publishing your content in the best way, and having to kind of do trial and error. What have you found? What's working? What's not working for the different social media outlets?
Just like Sister Sumaiya said, majority of the people of youth are going to be on Instagram and TikTok. People who are professionals are likely to be on Facebook and even LinkedIn. So those are kind of the platforms that we have to engage. And usually what has previously been happening is that we recycle content, but now we really have to make sure that the content that we recycle is benefiting the people, the demographics on each platform. So we have to cater that content to meet those platforms. And so another thing that we've been working on to just make things unique, because we also have the Co-Victory 20 platform, which is a series of weekly webinars that engages experts in fields within Atlanta specifically. We also have the Ramadan challenge. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and let you see the Ramadan challenge, inshallah.
Sure. And while Sawsan is doing that, Sumaiya, after Sawsan is finished, I want to kind of hear the same thing from you. What kind of content, is best for TikTok versus Instagram versus Facebook for these different audiences? What are you finding is the best type of content? Sawsan, you continue, and then we'll jump back to Sumaiya.
So this is our Ramadan challenge. Basically, there's 30 very unique challenges, ranging from going out in nature to meditating to shooting short films with your family and friends. And there's different point allocations to each kind of post. So you post on social media, that way people can engage in the spaces that they really are in. And you just follow the 30 days of different challenges. You post it on social media. The best kind of post is a video, because we want to make sure that people are engaging with video, because it is so popular now. People like to take those bite-sized information, and visual information is key in that. So that's why video is 60 points, and to really make people creative as well. And then written posts are down at 20 points. And there are cash prizes to this. So it's not only for your own benefit to maximize Ramadan, it's also you get a chance to win up to $300. So that's really kind of how we have shaped our unique space.
Okay, wonderful. And I think everyone can see that. Okay, Sawsan, you can, thank you. And so Sumaiya, so content-wise, what kind of type of content works best? What have you all been focusing on in Massachusetts? Tell us about that.
One thing that I think is super important is going live. There's so many webinars. Like I said, there's so many formally scheduled Zoom meetings, which is great. And those should continue to happen where, you have 3 p.m., you have a set webinar, that this is what this organization does. Combining that with going live spontaneously throughout the day, I think is really helpful on multiple platforms. So I think the two big platforms that I would encourage folks to use are Facebook and Instagram. I would say like Instagram is such a happy medium. It is, there are folks from older generations on Instagram. There are young people on Instagram. It's definitely a middle ground where you don't lose some of the, and I don't even want to call it the older generation, but maybe the millennials who might not be on TikTok, but you have the Gen Z on TikTok. Instagram sort of is a platform that shares both. And so, hopping on Instagram, creating a live, saving the video from the live in your highlights for later, it's something that's so simple and easy to do. Yet it's something that I think is a resource that is definitely underutilized. And the same thing that goes for Facebook. Although young people don't necessarily engage on Facebook, we're all stuck at home, right? So we're all like listening to whoever is in the living room, putting on whatever live it is. I know for me, like I listen to the khutbah when my dad puts it on in the living room. The physical proximity that we all have to each other is very limited. And so I'm finding that a lot of my young people are actually also consuming content that their parents are consuming. And it's a very rare window of opportunity for us to be able to go on Facebook Live and put content up.
Gotcha. So, let me ask you both this. What has gone wrong for you so far in these endeavors? What hasn't worked the way you expected it to work? What, hasn't gotten as much of a full third response as you expected? What hasn't gone the way you wanted it to so far? And I ask that because, we're all experimenting. All of this stuff, to some extent can be hit and miss. And so number one, I want people, out there who are doing similar work to not feel distressed if everything on the digital space hasn't worked for them yet, because you got to try different things. But also it can, help people learn, okay, well, maybe I don't want to try that, or maybe I want to try that in a different way. So Sawsan, maybe you first. What hasn't worked? What hasn't yet got the response you wanted it to get? What needs to change, do you think?
So with the Co-Victory 20 platform that we have, we've gotten really great response. However, because of the timing issues, we're kind of in a transition phase to find the right timing. So this past weekend, we were not able to have the 2 webinars that we have every weekend because we're still trying to decide, well, we usually have it after Maghrib. Well, that's not really going to work because people are going to be praying after Maghrib. So that's basically the adjustment that we need to have. And with the Ramadan challenge, we're trying to engage all individuals. We ended up engaging families and young people, very young people, like 8 to 10-year-olds. So that's been a really interesting dynamic, and we're still trying to figure out how to best engage people that are older, inshallah.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, that somewhat makes sense. If you think about like a Ramadan challenge, do this, do that. It's something where it's a fun thing for families to do, right? It's a competition. Kids like to compete. It's a way for the parents to give their kids something productive to do to Ramadan and kind of track their progress. So I can see why that would be. And I assume that teenagers are less likely to, I'm not going to do that. But younger kids would, might be more game for it. So I guess that doesn't make sense. And I guess that could be beneficial because then you're still connecting families with CAIR, getting them engaged with Ramadan. And so, even if, you're not getting all the audiences you want, you've at least engage one youthful audience that will hopefully then, be open to CAIR's work in the future. And you've got their parents now who are connected with CAIR and will hopefully be, be spreading our work, sharing our work, and inshallah donating, inshallah. Sumaiya, how about you? What has not gone as well as you wanted? What are the mistakes that are made? What are things that need to be improved? What are you thinking? What are you experiencing?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think one of the first things that comes to mind is, before the pandemic, we were working on our bullying survey. So we were collecting data results for Muslim youth in Massachusetts to assess peer-to-peer aggression as it impacts our Muslim youth. And so obviously we had to shift all of that to that physical dissemination, that in-person dissemination to the digital platform. We've just started figuring out how to do that over Zoom, and it is a struggle. It is definitely very difficult. the turnout is not the same as what it would be if you were to walk into a community center or a masjid to be able to get those results. And so one way around that for me has been, today making, physical phone calls, getting on the phone with families, with young people who have been in our programs, people we know, to just say, hey, like, by the way, we sent out this email. Here's a follow-up phone call about, this is the specific time that we need you to take the survey. And so I think, we can move to the digital space to try to do a lot of this programming, but, I just want to touch on something Sister Sawsan said is the personability that has to come with that. You cannot just put out a time and expect people to sort of follow through with that. You really have to, it has to have a human touch, and you have to sort of follow up with folks and lean on the relationships that you built before this pandemic to then, meet all the expectations that you want to meet.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. That's wonderful. So let's talk about fundraising. For civil rights and advocacy groups, the work that we do, we need funding to do it. We need money. And so obviously, many CAIR chapters have had to cancel fundraising dinners. They won't be able to go to the masjid to fundraise during Ramadan. So all those normal avenues of interaction and raising funds for our work have been cut off. So what advice do you have? What are you doing? What are your thoughts on, how civil rights advocacy organizations should be connecting with donors, connecting with their supporters for the purpose of fundraising during the pandemic, especially in Ramadan?
So the practice that we have at CAIR-Georgia is that we make sure that we touch people at least 3 times and then ask for donations. And what I mean by that is we prove that we are an organization that's going to stick by them, that's going to provide them with the services and the content and the information that they need. And because they want to, they will donate, not because we keep asking and asking and asking. So that's kind of one of the things the strategies that we take. And the second thing is to make sure that if you are fundraising, that you produce video and visual content. That's really important. We just have seen that people's attention spans are not as high with written content. So make sure that you have videos, engaging videos. Try to make it as emotional and as cinematic as you can, without being way too cringy, because that's an opposite extreme. And just going forth with that.
Okay. And, you mentioned attention spans. It's funny because we've gone from, Facebook posts, which could be, however long you wanted them to be, to Twitter, now to Snapchat, to TikTok. It's like our attention spans we're trained to have shorter attention spans, shorter video, shorter this, shorter that. And so I wonder, at some point, does that just is there a point where it becomes impossible to effectively deliver the message, or is it just you got to get creative and you got to think about these are new mediums and you just got to deliver the message via this new medium? So hold on, Sumaiya, first let's address the fundraising question with you first, and then we'll get to that, inshallah. Tell us about your thoughts on fundraising, Sumaiya.
Yeah, definitely. So our tactics have been exactly the same as CAIR-Georgia, putting out more creative content, making sure that it's not just an ask that is not accompanied by visuals. That's really important. We put out our Ramadan video where, we are making, an actual video and making the ask through video, making it feel a lot more personal, because otherwise we would have been in the masjids. We would have been, talking to community members in person. And so making sure that's happening. Another really cool thing that we do, and a lot of other organizations obviously are doing this, is putting the donate button onto all of our lives or all of our videos and our statuses on our chapter's Facebook page. And so making sure that you can recognize which type of content is going to have more of a reach. Obviously those are video content, like videos have a lot more reach than any content you'll ever put out, making sure that you have donate buttons on all of those videos.
Okay, now that's an interesting question. So for anything that you post, donate button, is that so that doesn't turn people off? It doesn't, no problem with that? You find that's an effective way to keep reminding people that they have a chance to donate?
I think what we do is we select the content that we think is going to have the most reach and then decide to put the donate button on that. Typically, that content will be, our weekly webinar that has the most outreach. Any type of videos that we are uploading that has a ton of reach as well, and any of the lives that we do. And so we will very intentionally pick which posts to, tag that donate button on, because like Sister Sawsan said, it isn't about, asking all the time. It's about being intentional about when you're asking and how you're asking.
And I agree with that, because I have seen that if you continuously keep putting that donate button on videos, people will get turned off by that. And especially when there's $0 raised on a lot of those videos, that's when things can kind of go downhill. So I think being intentional specifically with the videos that you think would perform the best is a really important tactic for organizations to use.
Okay. All right. So it's 3:26. We're almost out of time, but I'll go back to the question I was pondering, and maybe this is I'm revealing my age, relatively speaking, which is, the shorter attention spans, less content. Does that make it, obviously, I think it makes it harder to deliver the message, and you have to get creative in how you're delivering the message. So you go from long form writing, op-eds, editorials, to brief Facebook posts, down to little Twitter posts, snarky Twitter posts, down to Snapchat, Instagram, and now TikTok, which are, I think, I don't use TikTok, but I'm told they're videos that are very short video clips, right? And I really sound old. So what challenges that create for us as we're trying to deliver what's often a serious message about serious issues that requires, some nuance in discussion? How do we how do we deliver that message effectively through these increasingly, I don't want to say simplistic, but quick, short formats? Sawsan, you go first.
So we really do have to take into consideration why the short attention spans happened. And that is because people are overexposed to certain things. There's so much content to be putting into your brain and analyzing. And that's going to happen. I hopefully, inshallah, it does not, but that is going to happen in the future because now the internet space is so heavily saturated. So I think that what we need to do and what has been effective is to employ comedy. Like, even though that it's sometimes we don't find it appropriate, I think it's fine. I think if you are still delivering the message in a way that is constructive, that is appropriate, but in a comedic way, it's really effective because it keeps people engaged.
Okay, wonderful. Sumaiya, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, I just want to completely agree with that. I think that's one thing that, I spoke about in a different webinar as well, is just that, the underbelly of a lot of these issues is comedy, ironically. The way in which I'm noticing a lot of young people, and a lot of people in general, to be frank, are coping with the reality of intense interpersonal Islamophobia, or internalized Islamophobia, or systemic and structural Islamophobia, is through comedy and through storytelling. And so, with this oversaturated digital space, the only way to slice through that is to get to the heart of it. And I use that word quite literally, to get to the heart of it, to tap into human emotion and to really capture the true essence of why we feel the way we feel about a lot of the things that we are subjected to or exposed to. And so I think that's the only way to sort of stand out when there are, 10 million other videos about the same exact thing. How does your video sort of tap into the person that you're trying to talk to?
And if I may, just one more thing. I think that a lot of the information that is being put out there is not necessarily unique. So one of the things that the Co-Victory 20 platform does is it creates a coalition of people who might, or organizations that might be saying the same thing. So really taking that space and making coalitions rather than having each individual organization say the same thing, that will, inshallah, hopefully decrease the potential lack of attention span, even with videos.
Absolutely. So look, we've got 3 minutes left. We've talked a lot today about, mainly, essentially about organizations and how organizations connect with people. But what about people connecting with each other? I'm sure you've gained some insight into how individuals and people, communities can stay connected with each other. Any final thoughts you want to share, advice about what people can be doing to use, whether it's digital platforms or some other means to stay connected during Ramadan? Sawsan, I'll let you go first, and then we'll close out with you, Sumaiya.
So I previously said this in a past CAIR on Air episode, and I just hate the term social distancing. I don't think it's appropriate. I think that physical distance. Physical distance. What is it? I'm sorry.
Social distancing.
Yeah, social distancing I do not like because it's not social distancing, it's more physical distancing. And one of the things that my family has employed is discussing or having virtual group chats or videos with my entire extended family across the entire globe. So that is one thing that I really love about just making sure that using the virtual space to engage with our family members and our friends.
Okay, wonderful. Sumaiya, last answer to you.
Yeah. So apart from that answer, obviously continue to connect with one another over Zoom, over chat, but also make phone calls and find other ways to talk to one another that may not exhaust you. So I think one thing that, I mentioned at the very beginning is exhaustion that is happening because of Zoom or because of webinars. I think it takes a lot for folks to be in a space where they can, feel presentable enough to turn on their webcam and look into it and have a whole conversation with folks. And so, and what I find when people start to do that is they do it less often. And so if there are easier ways that you can sort of pick up your phone and make phone calls and talk to people really quickly and on a day-to-day basis, I think that's also really helpful.
Okay, I'm the old school then. Now we're talking. No, just give me one of those little turnstile phones and I'm joking. I know how to use them, but not because I'm that. Thank you both. Thank you, Sumaiya. Thank you, Sawsan. Alhamdulillah, pleasure to have you on the show, The Daily Dose COVID Conversations with CAIR. We look forward to welcoming you both on again, hopefully as hosts again in the future. I know, Sawsan, you've hosted. Sumaiya, it'll be your turn. Have you hosted already, Sumaiya?
I have not.
Okay, well, inshallah, we got to get you on as a co-host, inshallah. Just let us know what topic you want to cover and we'll have you on. So thank you both. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
And to you, the viewers, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Daily Dose COVID Conversations with CAIR. If you have a topic you would like us to address, please let us know. Tomorrow, inshallah, we plan to have a show focused on the hate crime that occurred in Missouri on the very first night of Ramadan. As you may know, an anti-Muslim bigot burned down an Islamic center in Missouri. And it turns out this man had previously vandalized mosques on 2 other occasions, in 2005 and 2009. He has been arrested. He is facing charges, and we are calling for the federal government to file hate crime charges against him, not just state charges, but we want to see him charged with a federal hate crime to make sure that this is taken seriously and that he receives the just resolution that is warranted in this case. So tomorrow, inshallah, we plan to have speakers from Missouri on and from CAIR National's legal department to address this issue, this story. And also, we would encourage all of you to donate to help rebuild that masjid. The Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as you know, said that if you build a house of worship, a masjid for Allah, Allah will build a house in paradise for you. So you go to LaunchGood to donate to help reconstruct that Islamic center in Missouri that was burned down. And may Allah accept your efforts and your Ramadan. And inshallah, we will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. for the next episode of The Daily Dose, COVID Conversations with CAIR. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be